Hey everyone, it's Lindsay and I'm back today with the Let's Make a Card video. So I'm making a card for the Digi Stamps for Joy challenge, and this month the challenge is always a anything goes challenge, but there's always a little twist. This month's twist is to create your own background. So to start off with, I am using the My Little Tree digital stamp from Digi Stamps for Joy, and I will leave a link in the description box where you can find all the information out about the challenge. This month is the October challenge, and you have until the 30th of this month to enter a card in and be entered into a prize drawing. So make sure you check that out because it is an anything goes challenge, so any card you enter is going to work for a chance to win. So I just printed this off onto a 4 1/4 inch by 5 inch panel, and I did that in Photoshop. Printed off with crop marks using my laser printer because I knew I would be using my alcohol markers, and I colored in this guy pretty traditionally: red for the Santa suit, green for the tree. I did some ivory for the belt and also the little trim around his hat, just so it wasn't stark white, black for his boots, gold for the star. Now here's where the fun is. I wanted to create my own background using my alcohol markers. So I'm going to be drawing my own background, and this is so easy to do. I am not an artist by any means, but just with a few flicks of your marker, you can create this background. I wanted to create a little tree farm because he has a tree in his hand. I wanted it to look as if he was walking through the tree farm. So I'm using a few different color greens just to create some flick marks to create the appearance of a tree. Now I'm leaving a little bit of white space right now in between the trees. I will come back and fill that in later, and I'll use a few different colors to create some depth. Now, anything that you get wrong, don't worry about here, because your eyes and the eyes of the recipient, they're going to fill in all those mistakes, so they won't even notice anything. You can see here, just with that little thin strip of white left in between those two trees, I was able to make it look as if they are two distinct trees. So I'll just keep adding these flick marks on the left and the right hand side to create the appearance of trees, and then I'll come in with my darker marker and just darken up the center of these trees. I kept the bases of these, I ended them all about the same place too, and that's just going to create a nice little hill and horizon line for me once this is all said and done. So keeping the ending points of these trees about the same is really going to help me in the long run. Here you can see I'm adding a little bit of depth to this tree in the front, and also in the back I'm keeping it more towards the center. So I'll just add just a little bit here and there with this darker green, and then I'll come in very, very, very sparingly with my first lighter color green marker and just blend this darker green out a bit. Not much. I'm still keeping a lot of that white in there to give some separation between the trees, and this just blends out that darker just a little bit. I'm also going to bring that lighter green down just right below some of those trees and give a few flicks of my marker just to create a little bit more depth and ground those trees a little bit more as well. And that's going to finish it off for the trees. That's how easy it was to create that. Just a few flicks of my markers. Now to give this a little bit more grounding, I'm bringing in a dark gray. I put some dark gray lines below those trees, and then I'm just creating some hills with that dark gray marker. And because he had little strokes underneath his feet, this is just going to kind of blend in with that and really help give the appearance of snow on the ground. I'm coming in with my lighter gray marker, just a little bit of this. I don't want to completely blend this out, but just to soften those edges a little bit. And I won't do a whole lot here. Again, I want to keep some of that definition and really hold on to some of those hills so it makes it look as if it is truly snow. Now at this point, there is a whole lot of white on this card, so I wanted to really brighten up the sky, so I'm using a blue marker. I'm not going to blend this out at all. I'm coming in straight with a light blue marker, and I'm just going to go around all my little images first so I get a nice dividing line and I don't bleed any of that blue into them. And then I will just color in this entire sky with that blue. And this is just going to help brighten up this card panel, and so it's not so stark white all the way around. It's also going to help that little fur on his hat stand out and make it look more white than it does right now. Because I used ivory to color in those little pieces and it's on stark white paper, they don't look very white. If you add a little bit of color around them, I've got the gray on the bottom, I've got the blue on the top, this is going to help those look really white in comparison. So I'll just use my blue marker, create some flicks here and there to create a nice sky. This doesn't have to be completely smooth because a normal sky isn't completely smooth. And that finishes off the background for that card. It was so simple to do, and it doesn't take an artist to create this background at all. Trust me, I am not that great of an artist at all. So here you can see one last look at that final background, and then I wanted to add some snow on top. I'm using the Faber-Castell. This is whip spackle, and I am using this little spatula tool here just to stir it up. And I like the whip spackle better than texture paste, and that's just a personal preference. You could use texture paste in place of this, whatever you have on hand. I'm using the Snowfall stencil. This is from Simon Says Stamp, and it could be used as confetti too as well. Just a little tip there if you want to get more use out of a stencil that you might already have. But I'm just going to apply a thin layer of this spackle all over this stencil. I'm not worrying about it getting on my little guy because snow falls in front of people, it falls behind people, it falls on you. So if you want this more realistic looking, don't worry about getting it on your colored images at all. Just smear this down. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. And then when I peel this up, it will look like the snow is falling in the scene because I didn't worry about masking him off. So it looks really authentic. Now once I pull this off, I'll go ahead and give you a nice little close-up, but you want to immediately rinse off your tools and your stencil. If you let this dry on your stencil or any of your tools, you're going to have a really hard time getting it off. You probably won't even be able to. So just rinse it while it's still wet. And any of that leftover you can put back in the jar too. So I just adhered this card panel to an A2 top folding white card base, and I made this panel exactly an A2 card so it fills up the entire thing. I don't have any border left around. And I wanted to add a sentiment, but I didn't want to cover up any of my work that I had done. So I just cut this little black sliver of cardstock. It's only like 1/4 of an inch thick, or 1/2 an inch, excuse me, and about 2 inches long. I'm using this Merry Christmas sentiment. It's very thin and little, and I just inked that up with Versamark ink, stamped that down on the cardstock that I treated with my embossing bag, and then I will heat emboss this with white embossing powder. This black cardstock is just enough to pull your eye to that sentiment, but it also blends in with the boots on the cardstock and his little glove, so it's not overpowering. So it doesn't draw your eye too much away from all the work that you put into this card already. So I just sprinkled on that embossing powder. I will flick off any of the little extras. Now, my daughter dumped out my fine embossing powder that was white. If you had a fine embossing powder, that would be better, but I guess she needed it more than me, so she dumped it out. I'll go ahead and use my regular white embossing powder, so it's not quite as crisp, but it worked. I used my heat gun to heat set this and my tweezers to hold it, and then I will just put this down with some fun foam and double-sided adhesive. I'm going to stick this right in the bottom right-hand corner, just so it lines up with that boot and really ties in with that black there. And that finished off the card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this card, and I hope you'll try to make a background of your own and also enter it into the Digi Stamps for Joy challenge that is going on this month. As always, I will leave you guys with just a few pictures. For more information and the supply list, you can head over to my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. The link is in the description box below, as well as the link to the challenge for this month at Digi Stamps for Joy. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!